So what I'm going to do right now is introduce Danni Washington, our moderator, and I'm really excited to have a chance to introduce her. I first met Danni when I was at the National Audubon Society overseeing a program called Together Green. Danni was a Together Green Fellow, and from the minute she applied, all of us were so impressed with her knowledge about ocean conservation, her spirit, and how much she had done before the age of 25. Since then, I've been following Danni's career and was so excited when she said she would join the NAAEE Advisory Council, and she has been such a wonderful friend to NAAEE in the field of environmental education. Danni is a Miami native with Jamaican roots. She is deeply passionate about our oceans and science communications. She actually dreamed of studying the oceans since she was 6 years old, and in 2008 she graduated from the University of Miami School of Marine and Atmospheric Science with a BS in Marine Science and Biology. At age 21, she co-founded, along with her mom, The Big Blue and You, a nonprofit organization dedicated to inspiring and educating youth about marine conservation through the arts and media. She also served for 4 years as a naturalist at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Biscayne Nature Center, where she helped educate thousands of Florida youth about local marine ecosystems. For 3 years, Danni served as an on-camera personality and science filmmaker with Untamed Science, which created nearly 200 K-12 science education videos for Pearson textbooks, and they're currently used in classrooms across the USA. She has also co-starred with Jaden Smith in the official educational outreach video for the theatrical film After Earth, starring Jaden and his dad, Will Smith, who a few of you might know. Most recently, Danni is working as the host of a brand new STEM educational TV series, which features the latest advancements in bio-inspired technology and design called Exploration: Nature Knows Best. It's syndicated on Fox and it's available on Hulu. I encourage all of you to watch it. She also created and produced a new initiative called See Youth Rise Up, which is a collaborative effort to elevate the role of youth leadership in ocean conservation policy and advocacy on World Oceans Day. Danni has a deep appreciation for the arts and seeks any creative outlet to express herself, including dance, film, and music. And has her bio highlights, she is an avid scuba diver, stand-up paddleboarding enthusiast, mocha mermaid, and overall lover of the natural world. And she is always ready for an adventure, like spending time with us and our 30 Under 30 winners this week. So let's give Danni a warm welcome.
Oh, thank you, guys. Thank you very much. I appreciate that intro, Judy. Thank you. And thank you to the rest of the NAAEE staff. Drew, Amanda, thank you for pulling this all together, bringing us together. It's truly an honor to be here today for the second time working with the 30 Under 30 selected panelists. And I have to say, I mean, we all landed around the same time. And it was similar as last year. We immediately bonded, and all of us we know we have this passion, this shared passion, and it shows. And it's like we just hit the ground running when we start talking with each other and sharing our stories, and it's always so exciting to meet such brilliant individuals like yourselves and get to share you know, our conversation and our passion. So we're going to jump right into it. I wanted to first mention also that I think that we are products of environmental education. We are proof that environmental education works and is important and is valuable. And so you're going to hear a lot about that today from everyone's story. And yeah, we also send love to our brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico. We wish we could be there this time, but we will get there eventually. Yes. So sitting next to me, I have Leandra Taylor. She is the coordinator at Merge Alliance and also an outdoor Afro leader, and she's from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Yes. And then we've got Connel Bradwell, and he's coming all the way from Victoria, British Columbia. He's the wildlife education manager at the Northwest Wildlife Preservation Society.
That was a long one.
And then we have Ankita Bhalla. I was practicing her name. She's a sophomore at Washington University in St. Louis and is the founder of Jagriti Environmental Education Program. Awesome. And then last but not least, we have the beautiful Lucila Belen Castro. She's a PhD candidate at the Institute of Ecology and Animal Diversity at the University of Cordoba and the head at the Pacific Biodiversity Institute, the South American office. So perfect. So great. So all of us are here. We're going to jump in quickly as we move along. Just to first start out about talking about what you do and why do you do the work that you do? Why are you passionate about it? And talk about the communities you work with as well, so we can get a picture and paint a picture of what you do on a day-to-day basis. So we'll start with Leandra.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Leandra Taylor. I'm here from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And just to kind of jump into it, I want to talk a little bit about myself. I was born in Berlin, Germany, and raised in Colorado Springs, Colorado, at the Fort Carson Army base there. So I have kind of a versatile background. And on this base, you know, you've got these like iron gates keeping us in, and I would stare at the Rockies and just dream of the day that I could go to them. And I always had a passion for the outdoors and for animals, but kind of limited within the barriers of this like physical iron gate. I majored in environmental science at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, and then I got a position with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Albuquerque. And I was doing whooping crane data and volunteering part-time at Valle de Oro National Wildlife Refuge, which is in Albuquerque. And I always thought, you know, like I'll be a teacher later. You know, I'm going to have this career and then I'll be a teacher later. And I realized, like, no, I'm a teacher now, and I can bridge this gap between my love for the environment and sharing that with students and things like that. So I decided to make the switch from doing data management work and move towards more of the human dimensions of conservation. And so now I am the coordinator for the MERGE Alliance, which is formerly known as the Middle Rio Grande Education, Employment, and Environment Alliance. And we focus on creating opportunities for environmental education and youth employment in Albuquerque and in New Mexico through collaborative efforts and teamwork. So, you know, we're not all trying to do the same thing and step on each other's toes, but how can we do that collectively in a way that really produces like a good product, and we can reach more kids and get more people outside and create opportunities for equitable access. So just a little bit about myself.
Wonderful.
That was me talking slow. I'm sorry. I told Lou I would talk slow, and then I was like,
We have to warn you that some of us had a little coffee.
Yeah, I did have caffeine.
It's all good. Yeah. We love the enthusiasm and the passion. That's awesome. So great. So let's move on to Connel.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Connel Bradwell. I'm originally from the UK. I'm actually from the same place as David Attenborough is from, so that's my little claim to fame.
Okay.
Yeah, so I started loving wildlife and watching wildlife when I was 6 years old, so I pretty much always wanted to do it. I started volunteering in nature conservation at age 14 in the UK, and we used to go on holiday to British Columbia, and so that's where I really fell in love with British Columbia, Canada, because it is incredible over there. I also studied at Nottingham Trent University, and I got my BSc in wildlife conservation. Nottingham is home to Robin Hood as well. Just, you know, these little I now work on Vancouver Island in BC for Northwest Wildlife Preservation Society. And what I do there is I run free wildlife education programs to low-income inner-city youth and youth at risk as well. And my job, I see kids from all sorts of backgrounds, from First Nations to refugees to new arrivals as well into Canada. My background has also been in orca conservation and research, and I've done a lot of cetacean monitoring. And right now I also work in bird banding, so we research migratory birds, including the really, really cute northern silver owls, which are like this big, very, very fluffy.
Everybody loves owls, right?
Everyone loves owls.
Yes,
yeah.
Except when they strike you with their talons, right?
Oh,
when
they've
you're
got
banding.
these little sharp talons, and they can get right in the skin, and yeah, they look cute, but...
Excellent. Thank you, Connel. So, Ankita.
Yeah, so as Danny mentioned, I'm a sophomore at Washington University. I actually don't have a science background. I'm a finance major and an international area studies double major at WashU. I think my academic and professional interests are really a reflection of my upbringing. I've grown up in 9 cities over 19 years, had the opportunity to live in India, also in DC for a while. And my love for the environment really started from a young age. But a passion for environment education and the importance of it started when I moved to India and had the opportunity to live on the Andaman Islands, which is a very isolated part of the country, off the coast actually. And working with communities and teaching rural communities about things like pollution that they really haven't contributed to creating really made me realize the need to bridge paradigms. And in the Andamans, I was working with a nonprofit that was teaching environment education in such schools, and that led me to found my own program later on in a different territory of India, in one of the manufacturing hubs, and I had the opportunity to really combine my business interests with my social interest in environment conservation. Jagati was a product of that thought. It's an environment education program that ran in 121 schools, encompassed about 18,000 people over 3 years. And today at WashU, I'm just continuing that effort as much as I can. I work with the Office of Sustainability and always thinking about ways in which to devise policies that can help the university reduce waste generation, contamination, and increase diversion.
And let's just remind ourselves that Ankita is 19. Okay, we're so impressed. Last night we had dinner together, and all of us were just kind of in awe, just listening to you speak. Seriously, it was so impressive what you've accomplished in such a short amount of time.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So, yes, ready, Lucila?
Hi, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank to the North American Association for Environmental Education for the great work you're doing. It's amazing. Thank you to Judy, Drew, Amanda, and Danny for making us, the opportunity to be here today has been amazing. So thank you very much. I am from Argentina. I grew up in a very small town called Miramar, in the coast of a huge lake called Laguna Mar Chiquita. So I've been surrounded by nature since I am very, very young. I love nature. I started working with birds, mainly with flamingos, and now I'm working with mammals. So I'm doing my PhD working with mammals conservation. There is some work done in Argentina about deforestation, but not about deforestation, so we want to know more about that. But I'm also the head of the South America program of the NGO Pacific Biodiversity Institute, which is an NGO from the United States, but has a big project in South America. So we are studying wild areas, like roadless areas, trying to understand them, to see what we know about them, and what we can do to protect them. I am also working in the International Society on Soil Lake Research. I am a board member, so I've been working as a young scientific also with them. I've been working in a red of networking with 4 countries, Bolivia, Argentina, Peru, and Chile. We have been working in flamingos and wetland conservation. And I started doing environmental education. First of all, it's like I was watching people how they do it. Then I started helping. Now I think I'm doing it. So I think I have been taking every opportunity that I had to do the best and learning how people were working in environmental education. And for me, it can make a change. So I have been doing that a lot. I work with local communities, not just with kids. I do some work with kids in the town that I live in, that I used to live in. But I do a lot of work with local communities, like with assemblies or local communities that have been fighting for example, against mining companies. So in this case, we have been working for 3 years. They have been fighting for 12 years, And so what we think is important is as scientific to give them a tool where they can stop doing that and think in a better future, like to working in conservation, in a long-term solution. So that's my background a little bit. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So we're going to jump into it. We have about 6 questions that we've already kind of talked about, and we'll jump around as each of us start to answer. And then hopefully we'll get a couple questions maybe from our live audience, if not from Twitter or from Facebook. Okay, so the first question, how can education help us address the challenges we face, right? How can education help us work on environmental justice issues and making sure that we're building a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive event or opportunities? Mm-hmm. So we're going to kick it off. We'll start with Lucila.
Okay, so for me, education is fundamental, is a key thing. Because what happened to me when I was younger is that I started to work in this and I felt very frustrated and very lonely. So I say, what I'm doing this? It's just me against a lot of people that they don't care about nature So, but then I understood that through environmental education, I was never going to be alone because I could start it in my own home, like with my family, then with my group of friends, and then even a big audience, So for me, it was the thing that gave me hopes to keep working on this. So that's what I think is fundamental because this is a big battle. I feel like it's a big war, against or trying to make it work a better place for all of us. So we cannot do it alone. But if we keep working as we are doing now, I think we can make it. So that's my thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so beautiful what you said about feeling like alone and then having this family and support within the environmental movement. And I feel like I've had that same experience growing up as an Army brat. It can be a very lonely place, but I found another family within, the environmental movement, and I think it's really important when we're talking about environmental education and why it's important that we're also acknowledging that environmental education and environmental justice don't need to be treated as two separate things. And when you're protecting the planet, you can protect people at the same time, and they don't have to be, you know, clean air is one thing and, you know, people are another. You need the clean air to live a healthy life. So I think in addressing environmental justice issues, you have more successful environmental education programs, because when you prioritize clean air or clean water, you have students and people that are more engaged and they're involved and they're able to prioritize, you know, like an outing, because their health is not the most immediate priority at hand. So I think when we're talking about environmental education, that we're moving towards now. This movement is picking up traction, and so is the environmental justice movement. But I'd love to see them merge together and really like acknowledge their relationship and how they're interrelated and kind of rely on each other for success.
Absolutely. Great.
And, you know, coming from a developing country, when I think about the biggest challenges we face with respect to reasons why there is inequality or how we can bring equality, it always kind of comes back to this idea of development. And as someone who recognizes the value of development, whether that's infrastructural, physical, social, I think important, yes, but it has its repercussions. And the equitable and successful part of it is the end result of development, but the process of getting there tends to create a lot of disparities. There will always be people who are left behind. There will always be people who get ahead. And I think education, especially environmental education, becomes so relevant in bridging those paradigms, because you need to get people to understand two perspectives. Environmental education needs to be holistic. So when we're talking about saving trees and saving the planet, we also need to address, yes, development is important. Yes, commercialization is important. Industrialization is important. Certain economies are trying to promote that. And I think if we put all of these factors into the way in which we're pitching environmental education, it can be a huge, it can give a lot of momentum to the movement and be a lot more accessible to people on both sides of this emerging border in developing countries.
Excellent. Great. Great answers. So the next question is all about, what are some of the other challenges unique to each of you in your role as environmental educators, and how did you overcome them? So we'll start off with Connel.
Yeah, sure. So one of the biggest challenges that I actually started when I started my programs 4 years ago now, that I hadn't considered at all because it never applied to me, was equipment and resources of students, particularly in the inner city schools. So if anyone has been or is from Western Canada, you know that one of the biggest factors is rain. It rains all the time, like for about 9 months of the year. So in order to take children out, in order to go out into the environment, you have to have, wellies, a rain mat.
Hold on.
Equipment.
Translation for wellies, please.
Wellies. Rain boots.
Rain
Is that
boots.
right?
Rain
Yes. Rain boots. Oh, sorry.
I'm saying wellies now.
Wellies. Wellington boots. Anyway.
There we go.
Yeah, so you have your rain boots and a rain bag in order to go outside and enjoy it. A lot of the time, the kids are outside and it's pouring with rain and they haven't got appropriate gear. It's quite miserable for them. They don't enjoy themselves outside. So this was a challenge that, like I said, a lot of them did not actually have access to this equipment, and I'd never thought about this before because I was obviously very lucky. So what we did was we addressed the issue by really thinking about our programs, where we were going to go. Was it going to be really, really boggy? Was it going to be marshy? Thinking about when we go, what time of year is best? Can we be flexible with the days? Have a look at the weather, which usually is like 7 days rain. So which day is it not going to be as rainy as the other days? And also encourage the teachers to help gather some of the equipment that they needed. So a lot of them would put out sort of letters and stuff to the parents saying, do you have any spare rain boots? Do you have any spare jackets from your kids that they might use and not use anymore that you could bring into the class that day? And that was one of the ways that we've dealt with the challenge. But it's still a challenge. And I'm looking for funding to be able to get more equipment for our organization so that we can also provide it, because I think it's a key factor that does stop kids from going outside, or even at least just enjoying themselves when they are outside, because I know that when I am not adequately prepared, it is quite miserable.
Yeah, I definitely, equipment is so important when you're getting people outside and to be comfortable and like really enjoy what you're doing. And I think, you know, in my work as the coordinator for this alliance, we're in these different communities in Albuquerque, and you have the South Valley and the North Valley and the East and all those, and they're so different, each of the parts of the city, and it's so important to have that trust there when you're trying to get people to come outside. And for me, my struggle coming in was that I am not from Albuquerque, and so, you know, in order to have that trust, you know, most of the time it's from somebody community that you know, and you're willing to like try things with them, and so I definitely spent a lot of time just getting out and just volunteering my time and getting to know people in the community and what are your needs and how can we help each other, you know, not how can I help you, how can we help each other achieve what we're trying to do, and do it together in a way that's effective. And I think I was a little more successful. Of course, I'm an Army brat, so I'm used to moving to new places and kind of adapting, and coming in with just fresh eyes and open ears and, you know, no biased opinions, and just being really open to what New Mexico is giving me, and it's given me so much. It's the first place that has ever felt like home to me, which it does mean a lot to me because I'm an Army brat and I've never had a sense of place or community where I belonged, and the land of enchantment has just taken me in, and I feel like I just want to get back to that. So when people ask me now, you know, where am I from, where do I go home to Albuquerque. So I'm really proud to say that, and I think overcoming that challenge and building those relationships has just been really great for me. So it's very rewarding as well, isn't it, getting out in the community and learning about it. And I don't know, I personally, like, I've learned so much going into especially the First Nations, the Indigenous communities, and speaking with them, and I feel like I come out knowing way more. Right. So yeah, and it's fun. Yeah, it's interesting in Albuquerque because we have the indigenous communities, we have the Latinx community, and you know, it's a global majority state, a majority minority state, and it's so interesting to interact with all of these cultures that I have before, and just watching them come together and build and grow and just being a part of that is so beautiful.
Excellent. What about you, Lucila?
Well, for me, a big challenge is because I come from a developing country as well. Sometimes we are facing health issues or poverty. So when we speak about conservation or environmental education, people, it's like they don't care. Because we are speaking about priorities. You know, they say, this is not important, we are facing this, but we need to do that. So for me, it was, okay, how do I change this view? Because we are speaking about priorities. We are speaking about this is also important for you to have a better life, you know. So that's one thing in my country, on the area I was working, about funding. It's hard to work and to find funding for the work we are doing. And the third thing is because the approach that I use in the NGO is to work in 3 levels. So I work as a scientist in the field, so I go there, collect camera traps or do surveys or all of that, like a proper biology. But then I have been working a lot, which I love, with local communities and at the same time with governments. So what I've been facing lately is like you have to deal with people's personality. Sometimes people's something like that, and it's hard because we all have the same objective. Why we need to find between each other if we want the same, you know? So it has been hard. I feel like sometimes I do the job just because I like it, not because I want money and a award or whatever. And people, when they see that doing something for nothing, they get scared and they don't trust you. You know, so it's hard to work on that environment. It takes time, so I think I'm doing pretty good, but it's been a big challenge.
Yeah,
I can see that.
I think I can definitely echo that sentiment, and you know, we all touched upon the issue of resources and funding and capacity building, and I think that becomes very relevant when you see a small success and you want to expand it and you want to give it to more people. And there's only so much government funding and government resources can do. At the end of the day, that's taxpayer money. It comes with its restrictions on how you can use it, to what extent, and how you can apply those resources. And for when starting out this program and founding the startup, the question was always about, okay, who are the stakeholders in the community who need resources? I've touched bases with the government. I've spoken to other individuals in the community. But one aspect that I think often gets left out is corporates. We neglect the fact that businesses are an avenue, a sector with huge human resources, monetary resources, infrastructural resources. And luckily, when addressing this challenge and trying to find this balance between corporate perspectives and social perspectives, India is one country with a corporate social responsibility law, which requires every company with turnovers exceeding 100 crore rupees to contribute 2% of their profits to a social cause. And when I was implementing, and when implementing Jagriti, really it was a matter of finding a way to convince businesses that environment education is relevant to you. You have caused this problem. You will have to deal with the repercussions of this problem because you rely on these resources to succeed. And I think pitching environment conservation as something that's not just for the agrarian sector of society, but also for the thriving, profiteering business segment, makes it a lot more approachable. You can tap a huge set of resources if you're willing to find non-traditional ways of funding. That being said, I know that corporate social responsibility laws, they have their loopholes, they have their issues, but if we can find other stakeholders in society who are willing to share their resources, even a portion of them for a limited period of time, I can only imagine how far we can go. Because this program started from 20 schools with government funding to 120 with corporate funding. And if we can do that in small sections of the world, that's a huge impact.
Yeah. So that would be a great bridge to the gap, right, of the conversation when you speak to those who are interested in development and progress, right? But still to the environmental community and know that they're one and the same. I think that's what our generation is really able to recognize, that we want to live great lives and have, the amenities that we like, but we also want to make sure that we're doing it the right way. And corporations and businesses can really help us with that. And like you said, the funding. We need more funding. Yeah.
And I think it's funny because we're living in a generation where millennials recognize, and the social reputation of a company is becoming so relevant. Companies are interested in knowing, how do I convince millennials to like us?
Yes.
And these are the ways. If you're a corporate and you're an educator, go out and use your resources and leverage them in industries and avenues and fields that you haven't yet. And if they have social return, people will be happy with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Okay, so flipping the script a little bit, what do you consider your biggest success in your career? Lucila.
We have been speaking a little bit about this. For me, it's my success. It's I keep trying. I keep trying. Like I said before, I had a lot of issues, sometimes with people, which is part of that. It's hard, But I keep trying, even though it can get stuck or difficult, or I don't have money or funding. I just keep trying. And also, I am a biologist, so I don't have a lot of social skills, but I'm working a lot with people. So
doing no, it's a huge success. I love it. Great.
Yeah, so I had a couple, I guess. In terms of a larger success, I was quite pleased that recently I reached my 40,000th person with my education program. That was very exciting. So that's been in 4 years, so 40,000 in a year, 4 years. So that was very, very exciting. But in terms of success, to me, it's not really about, the numbers are great, obviously, because I obviously want more people to learn about the environment. But for me, the smallest successes are what makes it for me. So I was at an event the other day, and a kid who had been in his class came up to me and was showing off his reusable water bottle. And we'd done a marine program, talked about plastic, talked about the issues with plastic bottles and the marine life. So he was showing me all the features of his, it pops over. So he was showing all the features of his new reusable water bottle that he'd gone home and told his mum to buy because they wanted to save the ocean. So that was the kind of success that I am looking for in the program. So that's what I see as success.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes.
I haven't really had a career yet, so this is a pretty tricky question to answer, but I would say I think my biggest success is just realizing that whatever I choose to do in life, and my interests are evolving, my ambitions are evolving, my aspirations are evolving, but conservation, the environment, the people who care about conservation will always form a backbone of my value system. And I think going into any industry, I know that no job is mutually exclusive of caring about the environment, which I think is a huge learning point, and has been definitive in my college experience, and hopefully will be in my career.
Yeah. You've got your own startup. And you're like, I have a career. Okay. Anyway, so we're like all so proud of you already. I guess my biggest success in my career comes out of one of my biggest struggles, which is just being a young Black female in this field, and it can be very, lonely and sometimes a struggle, and you feel outnumbered sometimes and outvoiced. But I was selected as an outdoor Afro leader, which is definitely like a big accomplishment of mine because representation is so important in this field and getting people outside. And I went on a hike last year. I realized I had a moment where I was like, is this the best contribution to the Black community at this time, honestly? And I went on this hike, and it was the super moon came out, and it just was like the earth was speaking to me, and it was calling me, and it was like, I have this experience and I loved it, and I want to share this with everyone. I want people of color, especially Black people, to have the opportunity to experience that, and I think Outdoor Afro definitely gives me that opportunity, and I can reach more people. I'm learning the skills to get more people outside and to create a conversation that's more inclusive and also gets me in a position that I can make the effective change that I really want to see in this movement and in this field and in all of that. So I'm really proud of that.
Excellent. Wow. Yeah, round of applause for all of you. And I know when we talked about this question, we all kind of like hesitated, like, I don't know if we want to talk about it, but I think it's really important that we do celebrate our successes, even at this early stage in our careers, because if we don't celebrate the small victories, we're not going to see the bigger picture, right? And we need the energy to keep going, and we want to encourage the rest of the environmental education community to champion us as well, and to keep encouraging us to keep going. And thank you to NAAEE for putting this together, because this is what it is. This is where it starts, where we can talk about what we're doing and get feedback and all of that. So yes, we definitely appreciate that. Wonderful. Well, we're just busting through these questions.
I know.
All right, so what are your hopes for the future and your role in shaping it? And what can you do to help shape the narratives that play out in your communities as role models? And we're going to start with Leandra.
My hopes for the future is just that the outdoors and the environmental field becomes representative of in the U.S. of what the U.S. looks like. Like right now it's majority white males that are outside, and I would love in the future for it to just be a mix, and it looks representative of what the United States is, and we won't need groups like Latino Outdoors and Outdoor Afro to get people of color outside and to feel included. It would just be the space that we all can come to and enjoy in whatever shape or form that we want to, and there's no defined way to experience the outdoors. You can go picnic, you can hike, you can just sit outside, you can walk around the block. You don't have to do this extreme sport to experience it. And I would love just to see the representation within the media and within all of those things that people see, those materials that make you feel like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't or I won't, because you don't see yourself doing that. And I would love to see the outdoors just be a rainbow of faces and have so much more diversity in age and sex and just all kinds of diversity. That would be my biggest thing.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting because I know in my programs and a lot of programs, taking people outside into the outdoors, it makes that. The outdoors can sometimes seem quite scary to some people. They don't know very much about it. They don't go out. And a lot of people, I think, are put off because they're not experts. And I always say to people, you don't need to be some expert bird watcher to watch and enjoy the birds. You don't need to be some outdoorsman to go on a hike. You can just go out and enjoy the space however you see that you want to enjoy it. And the space is not anyone's in particular. It's all of ours. And like you said, I would love to see more representative sort of outdoor space, because I know that out there, whenever I'm out, it's usually just white males. So it would be amazing to see something that was truly reflective of the countries that we live in the outdoors.
Yeah.
Related to that, I think my big hope is for people to get connected with nature again. I think the big problem started there when we started to forget, like the air that we breathe came from the forest, the water that we drink, the clothes, the food, everything. So sometimes we just go to the supermarket or just open the thing and the water, and we'll forget that we belong to nature. So I think if we think like in history, indigenous people used to be so much connected with nature, the way they used to live. And the society we live now, they just don't. I've been thinking a lot of that. Maybe the big answer is still trying to get people connected with nature again. That's my big hope.
Starting from just the basic foundational knowledge and connection.
Because
to
when you
nature.
explain that to people, they start thinking, and that's what I did at home. With the water, and just think where the waters come from, and they, oh yeah. So I think it's something that we don't need to just to work in an organization. We can do this at home every single day with all our families and everybody. So that's a start.
Yeah, I think like building off of that, as a result of losing touch with nature, I think we're losing touch with each other. And as a result of that, what's happening is that different communities are experiencing things like climate change in very different ways. And that's led to communities feeling isolated, targeted, or just living in silos independent of other people's opinions of what's going on. And in economics, we have this theory of like economies of scale. If you want to make something accessible, if you want to make something affordable, have more people do it. Increase the volume of work you're doing. I think environment education is definitely one of those things where we need economies of scale. If we want every place in the world to have environment education, if we want every school to implement it, we need to make it more accessible. And making it more accessible requires a recognition of the fact that our struggles related to environment education and our differences related to environment education are far fewer than our similarities. We're experiencing changes in very similar ways. Yes, the world is becoming more mobile. Yes, the world is changing. Borders are disappearing. But I think communities are beginning to live in these silos. And if we want to tackle this problem, if we want to make environment education more holistic, more all-encompassing, then we need to recognize that we are dealing with a struggle that's universal and not, individual.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think just to add on to that, in terms of getting back in touch with each other, and just acknowledging, sorry, my hands like really distracted me for a second. Like hands. I think it's important that we include the histories and narratives that really speak to the outdoors and to different communities and how they interact with the outdoors. And in New Mexico, we talk a lot of, indigenous communities have a different relationship with the land than the Latinx community than does the Black community. But we need to acknowledge those histories and those traumas that are there. And I think sometimes when we're engaging with different communities, we forget that there are reasons other than access that they are not going into the outdoors. And using that as a space for healing and, coming and reaching back out to each other and learning about different cultures. And, the Black community knows more cultures too, we don't just share that within ourselves, we share that with everyone, that would be the end goal where we would all be in touch and just kind of, I would know about all of these different cultures. I think that would be really great.
And as far as shaping that narrative, I think all of us agree on the fact that our role in that is really just to get as many people as we know involved. Because you affect one person and that one person catalyzes another person and that catalyzes an entire movement. And I think that initial momentum on our part is what we're all trying to do with our efforts. Reach as many people who are kind of interested so they can get other people who are kind of interested to be very interested. And that's how you really start a movement. And I think we're all striving to shape our own versions of an ideal society in that way.
Absolutely. And I mean, in light of everything that's been happening this year alone in the United States, and I know that most other countries are aware of it, that we're facing these major wounds in our society that are coming to light that we have to deal with now. And it's being reflected in our politics, it's reflected in our day-to-day lives. And although these last 9 months have been probably the most intense of my entire life, it has lit a fire in me because I know that we can do better than this. I know that our future is bright.
Definitely. Girl, mic drop on that one. I'm here with you.
So, anyway, we are here. That's why we're here. We're here to build what we want to see in the world. What world do we want to live in? That's our job, and we're ready to take it on.
And
So we have each other.
Have been very brave, and I've been reading a lot of in the news because in Argentina we read a lot of what's going on here. So keep strong, keep working, and we're here for you.
Thank you. That's awesome. Cool. So, any advice for the environmental education community and how they can engage more young people? Talking about, Ankita, how you're saying, talking to people who are kind of interested and getting them more interested. Well, how do we do that in respect to young people, this upcoming new generation?
I I think that there are like two folds to this. One is, of course, when we're talking about young people, my piece of advice would be don't be scared to get involved, even if you think that your skill set is not something that would traditionally be of use in environmental education. I'm someone with like a business background. Like, I'm a finance major. There's nothing I'm studying in college that is related to anything related to environment education. But there's always room for new skills. And I think that, you know, try to find ways of getting involved. You don't have to start something. You don't have to take that initiative. Join smaller groups that are doing it. If you're inspired by someone who's doing something that's great, tag along and don't be afraid to ask those questions. And for adults within like, the field of environment education already, don't be scared to build new skills and reach out to others who may be like experts in an area that you're not an expert in. Because like at the end of the day, I think the reason why environmental education is like not growing at the pace it should be is because I think it's operating within a silo. Like people are only like reaching out to others who are passionate about environment education already. And I think if we make it more holistic, more diverse in the groups of people that are involved in environment education, we can reach out through our rhetorical tools, social tools, personal relationships, and tap more into the field. Yeah.
Awesome. I know Connell, you had a few things to add on that, yeah?
Yeah, so just that for environmental education organizations or people working for organizations to find young people, we've talked about the disconnect between youth and the environment, but there is also a really large youth environmental movement that's happening right now. There are youth environmental groups all over, I mean, I know they're all over Canada, all over Europe, and I'm presuming there are a lot here in the United States. So find those groups. They're not that difficult to find if you can really look. Get in contact with them, speak to universities, speak to students, and also in the community around. So put out, you know, adverts and say, we're looking for young people, we want young people's voices. And we talked about, you know, you said about, you know, getting young people involved as well, but we also have to think about offering young people something, so whether it be credit, it doesn't have to, it sounds kind of spoiled, but, you know, a credit, a stipend, or just some way that is meaningful for them to get involved. Often young people at our age are working multiple jobs and doing multiple volunteering opportunities. So in order to help out and in order to get involved, which we want to do, it has to be really, really worth our time and worth our while. And yeah, and also look at the advertising and the message that you're putting across as well. Is your messaging designed and geared for young people? Is it inclusive? Is it showing that people from any background can join? What is the skill set you're looking for? Just make that really, really clear. I think that a lot of the times organizations are excluding groups without realizing that they're doing it. They don't mean to exclude, they don't mean to not advertise in the correct way, but that's the message that they're putting across. So really look at the message and who you want to bring in, and I think that's a really important thing, like I said, making it so that it's obvious that it's inclusive for everyone.
Absolutely. Great. I heard a quote the other day. I was listening to one of my favorite scientists, Neil deGrasse Tyson, his show Star Talk, and I think one of the questions is about like why have scientists or biologists or whoever, you know, in the science arena have been portrayed as like crazy people or like, you know, the villain. And it is true. He talked about in the movies that is what they've portrayed it as, and I think in the environmental movement we've lacked in showing all the different beautiful rainbow of people that are involved, right? And we just need, it's really just that simple, showing them, put them on the flyer, put them on your website. Like we need everybody to be you know, shown. But the other point to that quote was that he also said that they don't make scientists look like real people. So maybe within the environmental education, you know, field, we need to look like we're real people. We have lives. We go out. We do all kinds of things. We're not just always out in the woods. Like like we have families. You know, this is very important to make it relevant to attract a new audience or a new group of people to be a part of your movement and your cause. So.
Yeah, I think that we have this idea of a token scientist, and I think that the more that you look in, particularly in youth groups, I mean, this is an example, like there is no such thing as the stereotypical environmentalist, the stereotypical conservationist or scientist. There are people from all sorts and walks of life who are scientists and conservationists. So it's important that we highlight that and show that, so that, you know, we look at role models and inspiring people.
Yeah, I think it's also really great, and you guys are touching on, like, I do this exercise when I am in the classroom. What does a scientist look like? Draw a scientist, and you know, and how many of those kids draw themselves before that programming, and you know, afterwards you really hope that they draw themselves, and in whatever thing, and can be like conservation casual, or just like making it. I think it's so important to like make it cool. That's like the big thing right now, and I lost my thought.
You lost your thought? Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to dovetail. The last question is dovetailing on the previous one, just about the role of digital tools, right, in your work, and how do you effectively use social media to reach out to your target audience?
Yeah, so for me,
Yeah.
so my biggest digital tools right now in terms of my work are through my blog and my YouTube channel. And whilst, my blog has been recognized by the BBC. So that has been pretty successful. But what my blog has done is it's helped me to record the things that I have been doing in my career. So it's been easier for me to write a good resume. It's also been improved my writing skills for fundraising, for storytelling. And then my YouTube channel has helped me with talking in front of a camera, presenting how I act. And that's been a really, really useful digital tool. And I never anticipated that they would be so useful. I kind of did both of them, and I put them off for a long time thinking, who's going to watch? Who's going to read? Who's going to care? And I realized it's not even about that. It's about yourself and about how you're developing your own skills for your career. Also, I do use Twitter and Instagram for professionally. So I like it so that the public platforms like Twitter and Instagram, you go on there, you can kind of at least get an idea of what I do and the kind of work that I'm doing, and I found that very, very useful, and Twitter has been a great tool for promoting my blog. And what I also do in my programs is I take Twitter and Instagram handles into the classrooms to show the students, follow these scientists, follow these conservationists, they're very cool, and I make sure that they are obviously from a variety of different backgrounds, and that has been amazing in helping to link the young people with, or kids with, role models that actually represent them, that they can actually look at and go, oh, that's very similar to me, and they can start to look at their path. So that's been a really, really good thing since I started doing that.
And touching on Twitter, I've definitely noticed there's been an uptick in scientists' profiles, right?
Yes.
So they're out there. You really just have to search on each platform and find these individuals. If you don't want to do it maybe yourself, but at least highlight and showcase those who are, because that's super important for kids to see these examples out there.
And it's a huge platform on there, like of scientific communicators and educators. There are loads and loads and loads of amazing examples of people doing incredible work on Twitter. Yes. I love it. I'm addicted. And Instagram as well, but it's usually a lot of like research pictures, and it makes you a bit jealous when you're in the classroom.
Actually there's a recent hashtag trend called scientist selfies, and I think we should do an EE selfies type movement. Essentially it's just scientists who are in their lab or in the field, and they're taking selfies of themselves. And if you look down the feed, you're going to see this is what it is. It is represented by everyone, and there are people all over the world doing great work. And so maybe we need to do something like that within us.
Yeah.
Within our group.
I'm just going to piggyback off of this a little bit because I remembered what I was going to say on the last question, and I'll just tie it into technology. But I think it's so important that we acknowledge that you don't have to be a scientist to care about the environment and to be in this field, and you're a really great example in using technology or social media, books, whatever you're using, to communicate what it is that you're doing. So how are you reaching people that are also finance majors and having them reach out and think of new ways to get in touch with the environment and things like that? Like, you don't have to be a scientist, and how can we make it so that your conservation life or your recycling or your green friendly life is not separate from your personal life or whatever. So we as scientists and conservationists, it's all looped into one, but how can we have everyone, or whatever background or career you have, you feel like you're a part of this movement too?
In my case, like internet has been very, very helpful, but also I have been thinking a lot, because in a lot of the communities that I have been working before now, in the north of Argentina, actually, they don't have any electricity. So you need to come back and think in the tools that you can use when you don't have internet, Instagram, WhatsApp, all of that. So I think we need to also keep thinking about that, and about those communities that need a different kind of approach to work in environmental education.
Yeah.
I mean, on that note, I've been fortunate enough to have experiences across both these spheres, like one working in a rural part of India and experiencing that community without, these digital tools or access to any form of digitization. And the second side is working now at like a very robust, digitized US campus. And one thing I've realized is that I think we're very myopic in our understanding of social media. We tend to associate social media with like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, but social media is really just any medium through which people form long-term or any form of social relationships. And that exists in any country you're in and any setting that you're in. So if you as an educator are trying to figure out how do I tap social media, you've done the hard first step of recognizing that social media is important. The next step is now realizing what is the effect of social media in the situation you're in. And working in India, for me, that was like working with local panchayats, which were like small village assemblies where individuals would meet up. There would be different stakeholders present. It's a great point to introduce new information and float new ideas. And when we look at like more traditional US, like in a digitized society, those social media tools, there are plenty of them. One is of course search engine optimization, getting your company's name out there, embedding coding or whatever, trying to hire an expert who can bring you to the top of that pile of search results. The second is of course like building a more formalized digital social media strategy, which can be a huge help for any business that's looking to advertise their efforts. And these are all like effective ways of getting out there. So there are plenty of ways in any circumstance.
Absolutely, and I definitely think don't get overwhelmed by it, because you don't have to be on every platform. You don't have to do every strategy. Start with one thing and really be great at it. Right? And like focus all your energy there, and you're going to see results. Yeah. So I always get that question.
That's really good advice. How do I do Instagram and Twitter and this and this? Like, you don't have to do it all.
No, definitely not. So I think we're going to move on now to some questions that we received. So we'll start off with the first one.
It's like an eye exam.
Very large letters. Here we go. Okay, so this question: why do you feel networks like 30 Under 30 are so important for young people in the field of EE? Anyone want to jump on it?
I've been thinking about that.
Okay.
I think it keeps us motivated because, like I say before, we have been, in the things that I have been doing, I had some problems, trying to do the best, but sometimes you face obstacles at these kind of activities, when you meet people that are doing things that are similar to what you're doing and with the same spirit, we share a lot. So it keeps me motivated, and I want to come back home and I feel even stronger. And I think we are learning a lot from each other, so we are taking things back home from everything that we are working on. So that's amazing.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I have found from it, is that I've learned so much. It's so interesting to get different people's perspectives from different things, and that doesn't always happen without the kind of network. It's quite rare to sort of bump into another environmental educator, even when you're out in the field. So it's a huge advantage to be able to have a network of environmental educators from a huge variety of backgrounds, and you can ask them questions and talk about what they're doing with their communities, and you hear their programs and you might think, oh my god, that's such a good idea, I'm going to take that and do it in my program. So yeah, I found it a really good learning opportunity. And also, you mentioned earlier about kind of feeling on your own. I think it's great to have a space for young people to be able to connect, network, but also just to feel as though they're not the only ones who are young and in the environmental field, because there are a lot of us, but it can sometimes be very difficult to find them. But in networks, it makes it so much easier, and it takes that kind of stress away from thinking, oh, I'm on my own, I don't know where anyone is. And
Yeah. And plus, we've already started planning our trips, right?
We're going to Argentina first.
We're going to Victoria. We're doing it, and New Mexico.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, that's so true.
Great. So let's move on to the next question. Is this it? Here we go. Okay. From your different but global perspectives, what is the biggest threat to marine environments, and how do you hope to change it? That's interesting.
We talked a lot about this. We started off with balloons, and I think that was a weird way to start this. I think the biggest threat is that people don't realize what they do, even when you're landlocked, results sometimes in the ocean. And when you're doing these like balloon releases and like, you drop your bottle and you don't pick it up, and those things wash into the river, which goes into the ocean, and it turns into a bigger mess. But when you're in a landlocked state, or you're in a place that you don't see that every day, or you don't go to the beach or whatever, you don't see that, so you don't realize. I feel like there's almost this, like, you're able to just like you don't see it, so you don't out of sight, out of mind. There we go.
I also think that it's I just know that from working out on the ocean in orca research and doing cetacean monitoring, and I do a huge amount of other marine work and beach cleanups, garbage, plastic pollution is one of the most frustrating and one of the biggest problems. There are a lot of other problems with toxins and there's a lot of issues within the marine environment, but the plastic situation is one that is so simple to solve in that we can all actually do something that makes an impact. The things like toxins in the ocean and stuff, that's a real corporate industry issue, and that comes down to governments, and it makes people think, oh, I don't know what I can do. But honestly, not letting go of balloons is making a difference.
Or like skipping straws.
Skipping straws makes a difference. And if everyone did it, plastic bottles make such a difference. And you said about balloons, because we were talking about this quite passionately. Because
and we watched the footage from Cleveland back in 1986.
Oh my
when
gosh.
they released 1.5 million balloons into the air. And
painful.
Which
painful
landed
to
in
watch.
Canada.
Yeah.
In one of the lakes there.
Yeah.
Just
And
because.
I felt as though we'd spend 50% of the time watching marine wildlife and 50% of the time picking garbage out. We would have a little Zodiac, and it would be filled with plastic bottles, balloons, all sorts of things that had come straight from the surrounding area, and it was just a constant thing. And I clean my little bit of beach every single day. Every day there's something there. So that is a huge threat, and like I said, I think that maybe it's not the biggest, but it is the easiest for us to solve, because we can all actually do something.
Yeah.
And just to touch upon like another issue is like someone who scuba dives, I'm sure you can resonate, but just like temperature changes I think are a big threat to marine biology. Bleaching of coral, going underwater, seeing a lot less life than there once was, changes in just like rift, all of these things affect marine biology, and it isn't something we can affect directly, but I think it's one more reason to care about global warming.
And also, I think it's an example of evidence that we can actually show that climate change is real, and it is happening right now. And people say, oh, well, it snowed last week and such and such. I'm like, no, we'll go to the marine environment, look at the bleach and coral, come to British Columbia, look at the salmon. Every single year, the salmon run gets less and less and less, and you see it. We have orcas in our oceans that are starving because they do not have enough salmon. You can see it, and that is because of a number of different factors, but temperature changes in the ocean is one of the big factors in that. And that's an example, like I said, of evidence of climate change.
Exactly. And I think kind of moving into the next question, when you talk about optimism, how do you balance that between realism in your work? Because
Not in reality.
these are overwhelming, huge problems that we're discussing, but how do you stay optimistic and still be real about it? And which would you say is more important in reaching new or unlikely audiences?
I would say be optimistic in your vision and realistic in your goals, is how I have always looked at work I've done. So my vision of the ideal remains unchanged and is definitely a lot more optimistic than reality will be, but I think that's what keeps me going, as we all talked about. Yeah. So I think optimism is what keeps you going, but realism is what makes your work doable.
Yeah, I agree with that. And being optimistic in what you want to do, but also realizing that a lot of the things that we're dealing with right now are not permanent, and these are things that we could change, or there would definitely be some residue of some of these things, but there are things that with small changes over time there would be this impact. It's not like there's litter in the ocean, it's going to be there for the rest of our lives.
Not actually. I mean, you never exactly. When you're talking about light plastic, we start every day with our what we use, our utensils, our cups, our receptacles. Plastic is not evil. Plastic was just a bad design. And whoever created it didn't think about the end result and what that could mean. And so it's up to us now to change that and figure it out and cut it at the source, right? And as consumers, I think it's important for us to stay real about the fact that the repercussions of our actions are really exacerbated right now, but we can fix it and stay optimistic by changing our behavior and knowing that we still have power as consumers to change that as well. So
I would just say as well that although I'm not overly optimistic about all things, you do not get anywhere by shaming people.
No.
Yeah.
We've mentioned this, you know,
Yeah,
speaking to children and stuff, by telling the little girl who said that she released a bunch of balloons last week, by shaming her in front of the class, you do not get any results. That you cannot be too realistic. You have to be optimistic, and you have to say, you can do this because it makes a difference. That to me is, it's real, but it's also optimistic. There is things that you can do every day to make a difference. So it's like I said, it's not overly optimistic in that way. It's real, but there are things we can do. But you shouldn't be, by shaming people, I think you create more resistance to what you're
Yeah, I
trying
think
to
it's
say.
offensive.
Yeah, the environmental movement needs a big PR shift. We just have to change the way we talk about these issues, and people are scared and they feel overwhelmed, and then they become apathetic. So there's, how do we accomplish anything with that? We have to flip the script and show what the solutions are. What can we do? What's the next step? How are we going to break it down? Exactly. Awesome. All right, so that was the last question. Do we have any other closing thoughts? Last words.
I would like to say that I'm really grateful for this experience and having been selected for 30 Under 30. So thank you, NAAEE. And just you guys, like, thank you so much. We've been together for like 2 days, and I'm like, I don't want to go home tomorrow. I do, but I don't. I'm gonna miss you guys. And like, it's just so great to add you to my family of people that I have to support. And like we all struggle and trip and fall, but we pick each other up and keep skipping and running along together. So I'm just really grateful for this and for spending time with you guys.
Yeah, I think I can only snap to that. There's not too much else, but it was a fantastic experience. I think that it's inspiring to know that there are so many people out there doing such great things, and as someone who is like younger, it's good to know that this is of course like a viable career. This is something that if you're passionate about, there are so many different ways of doing it, and that makes me optimistic about like all that's out there.
In my case, like I spend a lot of time, when you start to do research about what is going on in the world, you can see like this is very dark. I don't know what is going on, with the world. What are we going to do when we meet, like in this experience with these people that are working here? Like it makes you, like I said before, it makes you feel strong. And I feel like a society, at least now, they know what is going on. So I thought at the beginning, no, nobody cares, but at least they are starting to know what's going on in the world. So I think we can make a change in the future.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again to NAAEE for hosting us today, and thank you to everyone who tuned in to watch our panel and share this time with us. We hope we're leaving you with some inspiration and some hope, as much hope as possible, because we are the future. We will build a brighter future together.
That was really good.
And Robin, man. Yep. And Danny and panel, oh my gosh, what an amazing discussion. You guys are so wise beyond your years, and as someone who's only a few years over 30, wait a minute, not that big a laugh. You truly are inspirational for all of us. I was just jotting down things like rainbow of faces. We should be celebrating our success. Everyone has a role to play. We need to connect more to nature, be more relevant. We belong to nature. We shouldn't lose touch with each other. We live in silos. Just so many great things. Thank you so much. And I don't want you to ever leave.
We can stay longer.
Yeah, we'll
we'll see if we could figure that out. So I just want to thank you all. Thank everyone who's still listening for joining us for Virtual Week. There's so much going on. Check on our website to find out more about how you can support the Fund for Puerto Rico. Find out more. Listen to this group again, because what they said was really important for all of us to hear, everybody in the environmental education field. And so on behalf of NAAEE, our staff and our boards, thank you all so much. You are terrific. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.